Imagine knocking on a door, hoping to be greeted with warmth, only to find indifference instead. The invitation was made out of obligation, the conversation feels empty, the coffee is served in a rush. They don't say it outright, but you can feel it. Your presence is no longer welcome the way it used to be. The truth is harsh, but necessary. Not all family bonds withstand the test of time. Many parents grow old waiting for a love that has grown distant, excusing neglect with phrases like, "They're just busy. That's how young people are. I don't want to be a burden." But how long will you keep turning a blind eye? If every visit feels like a reminder that you're more of an outsider than a valued presence, then it's time to hear what I have to say. Today, I'm going to talk about the people you need to walk away from, even if they share your blood. I'll explain why holding on to certain relationships can be more harmful than solitude, and why, painful as it may be, distance is sometimes the only path to dignity and self-respect. The final reflection in this video might completely change the way you see your place in other people's lives. My name is Gabriel, and if you've ever felt like you give more than you receive, stay until the end. This is for you. If someone asked you to give everything you have for love, would you do it without hesitation? You probably would, because that's what we were taught, to give ourselves completely, to sacrifice without expecting anything in return, to believe that true love demands no reciprocity. But now tell me, what happens when that love turns into an unpayable debt, when giving everything only leaves you empty? The trap of unconditional love is dangerous because it makes us believe we must endure everything for the sake of family ties. How many parents have endured neglect, indifference, or even disdain, clinging to the idea that they're my children, and I would do anything for them? And so, the years pass, justifying every slight, minimizing every disregard, holding on to a love that is no longer returned with the same devotion. The worst part is, they don't realize that in this blind insistence, they end up losing the only thing they have left, their own dignity. Imagine a neglected garden. For years, someone watered it with care, provided shade on hot days, and protected it from the cold. But over time, the roots of those trees grew unchecked, cracking the ground and lifting the very foundations of the home that once sheltered them. What began as an act of love became a threat to its own existence. This is what happens with love misunderstood, when you give without limits, without demanding respect, without setting boundaries. You end up allowing yourself to be pushed aside, treated like an old piece of furniture that's only in the way. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that life is not about how much you give to others, but how much of yourself you retain in the process. Loving does not mean fading away in other people's lives until you become an inconvenient memory. It doesn't mean accepting ingratitude with a sad smile or resigning yourself to being a shadow of who you once were. To truly love, to love wisely, is to know how much to give without betraying yourself. Maybe you felt it. You visit your children, and instead of joy, you find distraction. They greet you with a quick hug, but glance at the clock as you speak. They tell you to call anytime, but their replies grow shorter, more distant, and you stay, waiting for them to change, to remember, to give you back the place you once had in their lives. But you don't realize that insisting won't make them value you more. It will only teach them that you'll always be there, no matter how much they ignore you. Today, I'm going to tell you something that may hurt, but you need to hear it. Your love cannot be an excuse to let yourself be erased. If every visit is a silent humiliation, if every encounter leaves your heart heavier, you are not obligated to stay. Don't mistake patience for resignation. Don't cling to a door that closes a little more each time you knock. Because real love is not something you have to beg for. If you have to plead for it, then it's no longer love. It's habit. It's fear of accepting that life moves on, even when it hurts. Now here's an even harder truth. When you learn to let go, to create distance, to stop searching where you are no longer welcome, you begin to reclaim something you thought was lost. You start to remember yourself, to see that you still have a place in this world beyond the ties you once believed were unbreakable. Because in the end, the true test of love is not how much you give. It's how much you're willing to lose in order not to lose yourself. They told you that family will always be there, that blood is a sacred bond, that respect comes with age. But reality is different. There are parents who have given their lives for their children only to find themselves knocking on a door that rarely opens. They cling to the idea that love justifies everything, even when the way they're treated makes them question their own worth. We've now reached the second key point of this video. Blood does not guarantee respect. We were raised to believe that family ties come with unbreakable loyalty, that giving life is enough to ensure love and appreciation in return. But if we look at reality, we see something very different. There are children who drift away without explanation, who forget important dates, who treat their parents like an inconvenient obligation. And yet, many continue to make excuses for them, believing that with more patience, more calls, more effort, things will go back to how they used to be. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Yet some confuse goodness with servitude, continuing to give love and presence to those who only return indifference. The truth is, respect is not inherited, it is earned. And if you're not receiving it, it's not because you are unworthy, but because some people never learned how to give it. Maybe you felt that lump in your throat when you call, and the conversation barely lasts a few minutes. Or when you visit and realize your presence feels more like an interruption than a welcomed moment. Maybe you've bent over backward to avoid being a burden, to fit into their schedule, to prove that you're not asking for much, that you only want to be part of their lives. And yet, every attempt feels pointless. Sadness settles in, but pride keeps you from admitting it. You've become someone waiting for scraps of a love that no longer flows naturally. The problem is that we often think persistence is the answer, that if we show more patience, if we're more understanding, if we avoid conflict, things will improve. But the truth is, dignity is not negotiable. And if you have to make yourself small to be accepted in a relationship, then it's no longer love, it's submission. In the Bible, Jesus said, "No prophet is accepted in his hometown." And this holds true in many families. There are those who value a stranger's opinion more than their own parents. Those who treat everyone else with courtesy and kindness, yet grow impatient when you speak, get distracted when you share a story, or interrupt you as if your voice holds no weight. And while you keep hoping that one day they'll realize your worth, they keep moving forward, taking you for granted. But there is something you can do, something few have the courage to try. Walk away, even if it hurts. Not as punishment, not as revenge, but as an act of self-respect. If someone truly values you, they will feel your absence. If they don't, their indifference will confirm what you already suspected. But at least you'll stop exhausting yourself, stop waiting for something that may never come. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control other people's actions, only our response to them. And here is your choice. Keep waiting, keep making excuses, keep giving without receiving, or start reclaiming your place, demanding the respect you deserve, even if it means distancing yourself from those who fail to appreciate you. Because in the end, self-love is also a form of love. And at this stage in life, you can't afford to waste it on those who don't cherish it. The most dangerous thing about accepting other people's indifference is that without realizing it, you start getting used to it. One day they ignore you, and you let it slide. Another day they treat you with impatience and disinterest, and you tell yourself it's nothing personal. Over time, you normalize their lack of care, convincing yourself that this is just how things are, that it's better to avoid conflict, that at least you still have a place in their lives, even if it's only on the margins. But that silent acceptance is a slow poison, and what starts as patience eventually turns into a form of humiliation. We've now reached the third key point of this video, and this is where things begin to change. Loneliness is not the real enemy. Bad company is. We've been taught to fear solitude as if it were a punishment, as if being without the validation of others means being lost. But what they don't tell us is that the real danger is not being alone. It's surrounding yourself with people who diminish you, who ignore you, who make you feel like you don't matter. Because solitude, when embraced with peace, strengthens you, but the wrong company slowly drains your soul. Think of a house full of noise, but with no real conversation. A table surrounded by people, yet lacking true connection. Being physically present in someone's life does not mean you are part of their world. Some people hold on to shallow relationships just to avoid facing emptiness, only to find themselves trapped in connections that run on routine instead of love. Years go by, and they visit their children out of obligation, not desire. They sit in living rooms where no one listens, attend gatherings where their presence is just a formality rather than a choice. And worst of all, out of fear of being alone, they keep repeating this cycle, convinced that any company is better than none. But there's a strategy that can change everything, learning to enjoy your own presence before expecting others to enjoy it. Seneca once said, "A wise man is self-sufficient, yet he enjoys the company of others when it is genuine." The key is not to desperately seek people who will love you, but to build a life where companionship is a bonus, not a necessity. If every time you visit someone you end up feeling worse, if every conversation with certain family members leaves a bitter taste, ask yourself if it's really worth forcing those connections. This isn't about cutting people off impulsively. It's about recognizing where you are truly valued and where you are merely tolerated. There is a huge difference between someone who includes you out of love and someone who puts up with you out of obligation. If a child sees you as a burden, if a friend only reaches out when they need something, if in a family gathering your voice has no space, what do you gain by holding on to those ties? You don't need physical presence, you need meaningful connections. And for that, you must first learn to be at peace with yourself. Spend time on activities that nourish you, in places where you are welcomed, in relationships that add to your life rather than drain it. This isn't isolation, it's selection. So let me ask you, would you rather live surrounded by people who ignore you, or live a life where you decide who is worth sharing your time with? The answer is in your actions, not just your words. If this video has put into words something you've been feeling for a long time, subscribe and hit like, so this message reaches more people who need it. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and write this phrase to reaffirm your decision. My presence has value. Because what's coming in the next few minutes might completely change the way you see relationships at this stage of your life. Spending time alone is not the same as being lonely. The difference lies in the peace with which you live each moment. If you learn to value your own company, silence becomes a refuge, a space for growth. But if you keep seeking validation from people who only include you out of obligation, then every visit, every unenthusiastic call, every encounter filled with indifference only reinforces the idea that your time and presence have no value. And this is where many fall into the next trap, the hidden cost of always being available. We've now reached the fourth key point of this video, and here is where the truth starts to get uncomfortable. We've been taught that being present for our children and family is a sign of love, that we should always be the first to call, to help, to be there whenever they need us, no matter if that same effort is never reciprocated. But here's what few people tell you. Every time you offer yourself without being asked, every time you insist on being part of someone's life, when they don't make the same effort to include you, you lose a little bit of your dignity. And the worst part is, you don't even realize it. There are parents who spend the last years of their lives waiting for an invitation that never comes, doing favors that go unappreciated, adjusting their time and plans to fit the schedules of others. They stay home by the phone, ready to answer if their children need something, believing that this keeps them important. But the truth is, love is not measured by availability. If you always have to be within reach, sacrificing your own life in the hope of getting something in return, then it's not love. It's emotional dependence disguised as devotion. Seneca once said, "Life is too short to waste it waiting for what will never come." And that is exactly what many people do, wasting their days waiting for signs of affection, letting others dictate their schedule, settling for scraps of attention that come only once in a while. But there's something even more destructive. When you get used to always being available, others get used to not valuing you. You become the safe option, the backup plan, the person who always says yes, no matter how many times they've been told no. The problem with staying available for those who don't seek you out is that it robs you of the chance to build something better. While you wait for someone to invite you over, you miss the opportunity to create your own space. While you wait for a call, you hold yourself back from meeting new people, from exploring interests that truly fulfill you. While you cling to the belief that family is the most important thing, you overlook the reality that not all families are united by love. Some are held together by habit, by obligation, by a routine that only leads to frustration. If today you find yourself wondering why you feel empty, why every time you help someone you end up feeling lonelier than before, it's time to ask yourself an uncomfortable question. Are you truly giving love, or are you just avoiding the truth? Because the truth is, not everyone values you as much as you think. Not everyone misses you when you're gone. Not everyone wonders how you feel while you spend your time and energy thinking about them. And at some point, you have to decide. Will you keep making yourself available to those who don't seek you out, or will you start being available for yourself? Life after 60 is not a waiting room. You're not here to sit around hoping others will give you purpose, to be included only when it's convenient for them, to be needed only when it benefits someone else. You are here to live with intention, to choose who you share your time with, to build a life where your presence is not dependent on someone else's schedule, but on the strength with which you claim your place in the world. And that begins the moment you stop making yourself available to those who don't value your time and start using it for what truly matters. Expecting respect from someone who never learned to give it is like expecting a stone to return the warmth of your hands. You can hold it, protect it from the cold, give it all the time you want, but it will still be a stone. And yet, how many times have you fallen into the trap of believing that with enough patience, enough love, enough effort, everything will change? That one day they'll recognize your worth, open their eyes, and understand all you've done for them. But time passes, and the only thing that changes is how much it drains you. We've now reached the fifth key point of this video. You must not confuse patience with resignation. There is a fine line between waiting with wisdom and waiting out of fear. Patience is understanding that some things take time, but resignation is accepting the unacceptable. It's allowing yourself to be ignored, belittled, left in the background of someone's life like a piece of furniture that's only useful when needed. And the worst part? The longer you allow it, the harder it becomes to reclaim your place. The consequences of resigning yourself to indifference are devastating. First comes sadness, the feeling that something isn't right, but you decide to endure it. Then comes exhaustion, the weight of always giving more than you receive, yet still making excuses for it. And finally, without realizing it, you fall into habit. You learn to wait in silence, to never demand, to lower your head when you're pushed aside. And when that happens, when you become accustomed to disrespect, when you stay quiet out of fear of losing the little you're given, that is when you truly lose yourself. But here's the truth no one wants to tell you. What you lose by not setting boundaries is far greater than what you might lose by enforcing them. If a child drifts away because you stopped making yourself constantly available, it's because they never truly valued you. If someone ignores you when you start living your life without depending on them, then their affection was never sincere. People who genuinely love and respect you don't disappear the moment you stop being convenient. On the contrary, when they see you standing strong, when they realize you're no longer willing to accept just anything, they begin to look at you differently. The problem is that many confuse love with submission. They believe that loving means staying silent, waiting endlessly, accepting any treatment just to avoid being alone. But self-respect is the foundation of all other relationships. If you don't love yourself enough to demand respect, no one else will do it for you. And this is where the change must begin. Don't wait for others to change. That is beyond your control. But you can change. You can decide that you will no longer stay where your voice isn't heard, that you will no longer justify someone else's indifference, that you don't need to prove your love through constant sacrifice. Stoicism teaches us that the only things we truly own are our mind and our choices. And today, you have a choice: to keep waiting for others to give you the place you deserve, or to claim that place for yourself. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with the certainty that life is too short to live in the shadow of those who fail to see you. Because in the end, the respect you receive from others begins with the respect you have for yourself. And that is something only you can change. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask, if today were your last day, what would you regret more? Setting boundaries or putting up with too much? Taking control of your life or waiting until the end for others to do it for you? Resignation is easy. It starts with small compromises, staying silent when something hurts, making excuses for indifference. Then days turn into years, and one day you wake up realizing your time was spent waiting, holding in bitterness, hoping someone would truly see you, only to find out it's too late. We've now reached the 6th key point of this video, and it's time to talk about the one thing that will make people value you, even if it hurts. And here's the truth few dare to say: if you want to be missed, disappear. Because sometimes, the only way to know if you truly matter to someone is to stop being constantly available. Stop being the first to call, the first to show up, the one who always adapts to others' schedules and expectations. Because as long as you're always there without anyone asking, you will remain invisible. Imagine that today you decide not to call, not to visit, not to insist. A week passes. A month. Who reaches out? Who notices your absence? Who wonders if you're okay? The answer might hurt, because you may realize that some people only kept you in their lives because you were easy to find, because it cost them nothing to have you there, like a piece of furniture that never moves. But as painful as that truth may be, it is also freeing, because it shows you, without a doubt, who truly values you and who is only using you as an emotional convenience. The problem with always being available is that your presence loses its value. It's like a chair that's always in the same place. No one notices it, no one thinks about it, no one moves it until it's gone. But when you disappear, when you stop being a predictable fixture in other people's lives, something interesting happens. Some will forget you, and with them, you've lost nothing. But others, the ones who truly care, the ones who took you for granted without realizing it, will feel the void. They'll wonder where you are, why you're no longer reaching out, why you've gone silent. And that is when you will see who truly deserves your time. This isn't about punishing anyone or playing games with affection. It's about dignity. It's about understanding that you are not here to be someone's shadow, to be a backup plan, to keep showing up in spaces where you are not appreciated. It's about reminding yourself that you have worth, that your presence is a privilege, not an obligation, and that if someone truly wants you in their life, they need to show it, not just assume you'll always be there no matter how they treat you. Stoicism teaches that detachment doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you love with wisdom. It doesn't mean cutting everyone off. It means letting go of relationships that only exist because you are the one keeping them alive. If you disappear and no one looks for you, you didn't lose a family. You lost an illusion. And that loss is the first step toward a life where you no longer wait to be noticed, but instead choose who is truly worthy of sharing your time. Because your life, your time, and your presence deserve more than the indifference of those who never learned to appreciate what they had. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you knows you've been living in waiting, justifying, holding on to nostalgia for what once was, but no longer is. You've seen how your presence has become routine for others, how your love has been taken as a right rather than a gift. And you've realized that the only way to regain your value is by doing something few dare to do, disappearing to see who truly misses you. But now comes the most important question of all. What will you do with this truth? We've reached the 7th key point of this video, and this is where everything comes together. You can't keep waiting for someone else to give you a place in their life. It's time to build your own refuge, to stop seeking approval from those who don't know how to value you, and to start giving meaning to your time in a different way. Because if you keep waiting for others to change, to realize, to wake up, you will be giving away the only thing that truly belongs to you, your life. Think about this. If today you decided to stop calling, stop insisting, stop adjusting your time to fit someone else's schedule, what would you do with those hours you once spent waiting? Where would you put the energy you've been wasting on one-sided relationships? Some people, when they let go of what hurts them, discover hidden passions, new friendships, paths they never imagined. And others, out of fear of letting go, cling to an empty chair, a phone that never rings, a love that has gone cold. The difference between the two isn't luck or fate. It's the decision to act instead of mourn. The problem is that many confuse letting go of what hurts with giving up on life. They believe that if they stop clinging to broken bonds, they will have nothing left. But the truth is, only when you release what no longer nourishes you can you make room for what truly matters. And here's the real question. Will you keep investing your time in proving to others that you deserve their attention, or will you start living for yourself? Stoicism teaches that true freedom comes from detachment. You cannot control whether someone loves you, whether they reach out, whether they value you. But you can control how you respond to that reality. You can keep fighting against the current, waiting for recognition from those who have already shown they won't give you their time. Or you can let go, build a life that doesn't depend on external validation, and realize that when you stop chasing what ignores you, what truly matters begins to find its way to you. Today you have two choices. Continue down the same path, justifying, waiting, carrying the sadness of feeling unimportant in the lives of others. Or stand up and start creating a space where your presence is a gift, not a burden, where you don't need permission to exist, where every day has meaning because you choose to give it meaning. The choice is yours, and there is no more time to waste. If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. This video isn't easy to watch because it forces you to face a truth that many prefer to ignore. It has placed a mirror in front of you, one that few dare to look into. And yet, here you are, confronting it, accepting that something in your life needs to change, but understanding it isn't enough. It's not enough to nod, to say, "You're right," to recognize that something isn't right. Because awareness without action is just another way of lying to yourself. Now that you know what you know, what are you going to do about it? Most people will go back to the way things were. They will keep making excuses, keep waiting, keep staying silent, keep pretending they didn't hear what they actually heard. Because change is scary, because it's easier to stay in the routine, because taking control of your life means accepting that everything you've allowed up until now has been a choice. And not everyone is ready to take on that responsibility. But a few, the ones who truly want to live with dignity instead of resignation, will do something different. They will pause before picking up the phone again. They will think twice before looking for another excuse to visit people who have already shown they don't need them. And most importantly, they will start asking themselves what they can do with the time they once wasted on waiting. If you're one of those who have decided to wake up, I want you to confirm it in the comments. Write, "My time matters," along with the country you're watching from, because that is the commitment you take from this video to remind yourself every day that you are not here to fill empty spaces in other people's lives, but to take up space in your own. That you don't need to be missed, you need to be respected. And that the only way to be valued is to start valuing yourself first. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. This channel doesn't exist to sugarcoat reality or to give you comforting words that keep you stuck in the same life. It exists to challenge you, to wake you up, to remind you that you still have power over your own destiny, but only if you choose to take it into your hands. Subscribe if this message has resonated with you, and if you want more content that speaks not to your comfort, but to your strength. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it, even if it makes them uncomfortable, even if they don't want to listen at first. Because sometimes the truth that hurts the most is the only one that can set us free. Don't stop here. On the screen, you'll see 2 more videos that can help you continue on this path. Choose one and keep going. Because this isn't the end of the conversation. It's just the beginning.